Hey guys, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. Today I want to talk about the Arno Bernard Imamba. I'm going to talk about it with a bunch of other exceptionally well done high-end EDC folders. I want to talk about sort of where this fits in a bit of a spectrum that I like to think about from sort of, hard use to, lighter duty EDC. Um, I've got a few pretty classic knives here that I want to sort of fit into the discussion, but I really do feel like the Arno Bernard Imamba lands in a really good sweet spot, and so I sort of have all of these other knives to help me talk about where this lands and how this stacks up, but also to help you as a viewer think through what sort of at what point in the spectrum do you want to land, and that'll help probably inform your purchases moving forward. So those are kind of the two things I want to cover with this video. The other thing I've got to do is apologize. It's been quite a long time since I made a video. I have had no voice for so long. You guys have no idea. I got what I would call a pretty minor cold. I felt a little rough for like maybe 3, 4 days. Like it wasn't even as bad as most colds normally are, but the cough that came along with it just does not go away. I still have a slight bit of a cough now, and I'm almost a month out. It is so frustrating. I think many of you know that I'm a preacher, and so I've had to use halls and water and everything else I could think of to even get through a short presentation for a sermon. So making videos just has not been feasible the last few weeks, so I want to apologize for a fairly lengthy hiatus. I should get back to, it's busy in the summer, guys, so I apologize, but at least I generally try to aim for a couple videos a week, and I should be getting back to something close to that schedule moving forward. Okay, so let's go ahead and move everything out of the way, and then we'll sort of bring it back in on a one by one basis as we sort of work our way through some high-end folders that are very favorites to me. Now, I'm gonna throw the MSI in here because, well, it's not, by the way, these are Shepherd Custom scales. They are absolutely gorgeous. Well, it's not a super high-end knife. Certainly in this configuration it is, and in the G10 and some of the other configurations this is available in, it's a little bit on the nicer end. I also want to throw in the Tactile Turn Maverick because I find this to be such a perfectly balanced and executed knife that it kind of, to me, scratches that almost that Sabenza itch. It's kind of clean and simple and yet very classy, and it just lands in a very similar, to me, a very similar spot. Okay, so let's actually start with this knife. Okay, so definitely high-end materials, high-end fit and finish, high-end look in terms of just being classy and clean. Really attractive knife here. Now, where this is a little bit different than the other knives that are going to be out here today is it's a little bit on the lighter use end of the scale. Now, it's MagnaCut steel, which is great, but you can see the blade stock is pretty slim there. Okay. And so this is a knife that I'm not going to be wanting to put into any kind of a real hard use type of scenario, but still a very capable, very reliable, and well executed cutting tool. I do know there have been some hiccups with the action on these, and I think that's all worked out by now. Of course, if you're buying one, you got to make sure that you have a sense for when it was made, and probably a good practice with this particular knife is going to be go ahead and pick it up and get it in hand, in person, in store before you commit to purchase this. But despite the fact that this has had a few little hiccups, I find this one of the nicest knives of the last of recent history. It is absolutely gorgeous, and also a very capable knife. This is almost my every Sunday carry. There aren't too many higher end knives that I enjoy as much. All right, now let's bring in the Imamba, having talked about this. All right. Where does the Imamba land? Well, certainly the blade stock is thicker. It is a hollow grind, which means very, very thin slicey edge. Now this one, of course, has that brand new stonewash finish, which is absolutely beautiful. And this is a little more dressed up with that crazy looking carbon fiber. That is absolutely gorgeous. Don't want to get too far off track just talking about details. I want to try and keep this primarily about the functionality of these tools, but there are some differences. Okay, this is purely a production knife. This is going to be done in the Arno Bernard machine shop. It is nearly a custom, right? At the very least, it's a mid-tech, and so you're getting a little more hand work, a little more attention from a real craftsman in putting this thing together. Okay, it's a little more hand filling. Okay, the ergonomics are the ergonomics on this are great, but it's definitely a slim, lighter weight EDC option. This is going to be a little more girthy, okay, have a little bit of a hollow grind. And, if I was going to be doing prolonged cutting tasks, there's definitely a difference that you're going to notice in hand between these two options. All right, so this is kind of starting off as at the lighter end of the spectrum. I might compare this to a Benchmade bug out if you put titanium scales on it or something like that. And so now we're going to kind of move away from the bug out into something a little more hard use. And so I'm going to bring in what is one of my favorite all-time higher end knives, and that is the Riot Torrent. Now, obviously made overseas. This is going to be both of these are made overseas. This one's South Africa, this one's China. The cost of labor is sufficiently different, and of course, again, this is going to be made in a machine shop by the brothers. All right, so that's a significant difference in and of itself. Now, there are a couple of things that I want to point out here in terms of heft or durability. So this is using sort of the Hinderer inspired multi-point blade stop system. So now we've got 2 points here touching the frame, and then we've got pressure applied by the lock bar, and of course all of that is hinging on the pivot. Okay, so that makes this a very durable, long-lasting way of achieving a stop location, but it also adds a lot of side-to-side stability, which is great. Now, the Arno Bernard doesn't have an issue with side-to-side play. It's rock solid, but it's not going to be quite as robust. The other thing this has is multi-row bearings, and so not quite as robust as the Torrent, which is getting close to. This is sort of our stand-in for Hinderer, if you will. All right, so the Imamba doesn't get to the same point as a Hinderer or some other sort of very geared for hard use type of options, but it's also a little bit of a step up, as you saw from the Maverick here. Okay, bringing in another South African maker. All right, now we're looking at the Inkosi, which is one of my all-time favorite Chris Reeve knives. Absolutely beautiful, great knife, tons of utility. Now this is really built different. Now the attention to detail and the handwork is very, very close on these two knives, but this is on bearings. Now these are available not on bearings. This is not on bearings, and so you don't kind of get that same action. If you're a big action guy, you already well established this, that CRK doesn't have that, that flying frictionless deployment like a knife on bearings is going to have. All right, that's kind of, we all come to expect that at this point. So you're kind of getting that with the Arno. Still, you still get a very classic looking knife. You still get a great feel in hand. You still get a knife that's definitely meant as a functional cutting tool, but it's going to be a little more enjoyable in terms of deployment for you if that's what you're into. It also is going to have more deployment options, and I have to say the cutout in the blade is a great move by Arno Bernard. I really, really like that change, and I mentioned that to them. We did some messaging back and forth on Instagram, and I was making that point to them that I love the way that they've done the fuller through the blade. All right. In terms of longevity, in terms of toughness and durability, yeah, the CRK is going to edge this out just a little bit. In terms of size, weight, comfort of carry, the Bernard is going to step ahead just a little bit. Again, it depends on what you're looking for and what you're prioritizing, which one of these you're going to want to move toward. Finally, I do want to throw in one other knife in here. In fact, there are two other knives that I want to briefly talk about. We're gonna forget one, but I want to throw the MSI in here just because I think it is very well done. It certainly qualifies as a high-end cutting tool. Now it is on multi-row bearings. It's a little bit more on like the hard use. I would put this, if I was talking about where these all land in terms of sort of toughness and durability and utility, I would kind of line these up in this particular fashion, with the CRK being sort of the most hard use, and out of this particular, and then the Maverick, which I don't have room for on the screen, would be the least, so it's down here, just simply represented. All right, but this is where I would see these sort of breaking down in terms of hard use type of cutting tool and what kind of use you're going to be putting this particular knife under. Obviously, some of these knives are quite a bit bigger. Some of them are not that much bigger. All right. So again, I need to qualify this in a couple of ways. All right. I would not want to use any knife for any kind of serious prying. I'm always going to, a knife that costs this much, I'm always going to take a little bit of care in terms of what I'm using it for and why I'm using it that way. Do I have another knife that's equally good? And of course, if you need real toughness and real durability and you want to absolutely just pound on something, go get yourself a companion. And if you break it, if you damage it, it's no big deal. You can just get another one for like $15. Okay. But if you want the ability for a hard use, or if you want the ability for a high-end EDC to flex into some harder use, some more tactical stuff, if that were ever going to be the case, then at least it's nice to know that you've got that option, or that that option at least exists in some theoretical space. All right. I hope you've enjoyed this. I do want to point out, there's a couple things that I want to point out here. Back to the CRK again for a couple of minutes before we close things out. What CRK does a little bit different is you've got a massive stop pin, a massive pivot. You've got giant washers, which are giving a lot of side-to-side stability. You're not really seeing that on any other knife anywhere. So it's almost a little unfair to bring that kind of thing in. The Riot Torrent gets a little bit close to that. Again, multi-row bearings are going to spread that force out a little more, and the stop pin interface with the frame again adds a little bit of longevity, a little bit of extra durability, and a little bit more side-to-side stability as well. Okay, so that is again how I'm, some of the ways that I'm sort of making that assessment in terms of most hard use to least hard use. This lands in a really, really nice spot, though, I would suggest. It's a little bit on the small side compared to most of these, which means it's going to be a little more comfortable to carry. It feels just as good in hand as just about anything else that I've shown you. The action is superb. The detail and fit and finish on this is, again, superb. And so it actually will outpace some of the knives that we've seen here in that department, just because these are done in small batches by just a few guys who are very, very skilled craftsmen, and that does make a difference in terms of overall outcome and fit and finish, and attention to detail. So I think the Imamba stacks up really, really well. I don't think it always gets the credit that it deserves. You know, you see a lot more talk about the Arius and a few other knives that the Holtz. Which are still, sort of small batch production. Probably most of those are not getting the same handwork and attention to detail as something from Arno Bernard. Nonetheless, they've overshone them just a little, and I'm not sure if that's totally deserved. I think the Imamba gets overlooked just a little bit for mostly because I think it's a little cheaper. It's not as widely available, and I don't know. Maybe this design just doesn't speak to everyone. Although it certainly speaks to me, and I would take this over definitely over some of those other high-end options that are out there. So there you go, guys. Those are some further thoughts on the Imamba. Glad to be back. I'm glad to be able to make videos again. It was so frustrating having a bunch of stuff here that I wanted to talk about that I couldn't really get into because I just haven't had a voice, almost no voice at all, and certainly not a voice that could talk for the 15 minutes that it took me to make this video. Thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We will talk to you soon.